Alright everyone, it's time for Occult Literature, video number 227, Karma by Annie Besant, of course one of the primary figures within latter-day Theosophy. We're talking early 20th century. Link in the description to my edition of this work on Amazon, second and third links to my books, blogs. If you like Theosophical works, I think there are like 20 now available. It's one of the major schools of occult literature that really is fun to edit as well. It's about 58 pages, and what it is one part of a 4-volume series made by Besant. At the time, see, the problem in Theosophy was this. Theosophy had a lot of literature. You had, a bunch of works of Blavatsky and Steiner and all of these other figures, Leadbeater and so forth. Most of them were very obtuse, or kind of out there in their content. That is, there weren't that many basic primers. Like, I guess, Occultism for Beginners style stuff by Dower maybe would stand out. But for the most part, for at least the semi-literate, sort of lower to middle class audience, there wasn't a whole lot available. They were big volumes of work, a lot of complicated sort of references to Hinduism and Buddhism especially. Besant realized this as a problem and said, well, we need a basic primer, something more introductory for people that aren't yet Theosophists. Didn't matter if you were already familiar with Theosophy, it was no problem. But if you didn't know anything about it, how did you determine what the basic ideals of it were, and therefore decide whether you wanted to join it or sort of study it further? Besant therefore made this and other works, and this particular one, again on the shortish side, is about karma. Now, from the Buddhic perspective, mostly, it's westernized vaguely. Like some of the things that the Theosophists taught about Eastern traditions had been westernized. Like the sense of morality was slightly westernized within the Theosophical tradition, and still I believe is. I don't know as much about modern-day Theosophical thought, because I've ruminated mostly on the old out-of-copyright materials that I'm actually editing, because I'm reading it as I edit. So I know a great deal of that, not so much more modern material. And the Theosophical Society still exists. I think they're still based in Adyar in India. I think there's still tens of thousands of members. If I remember correctly, there's still quite a few of them scattered around the world with multiple little places that they, not worship but study. And so it's an interesting work. If you want an introductory primer to Besant's more Buddhist side, she was more into that side of Eastern philosophy. If you want a basic primer on that, this is indispensable. Then there's also the individual major Theosophists all had their own things that they were kind of interested in. Like Leadbeater, I believe it was a lot of dreams, occult history, like sort of superstition history, folklore sort of stuff. Steiner was more obtuse, more verbose. He was into a lot of the fusion political end of spirituality. Like he spoke on culture and society a lot. A lot of the Theosophists seem to have been very interested in Shakespeare, among other things. Can't remember the names of them. And then you have like Blavatsky, the origin story of Theosophy, Buddhism, Hinduism, influencing a little Western occultism, some Russian sort of orthodoxy, sort of diaspora seeps in there as well, because of where she's from. And so you have these different schools of thought, these sub-schools within Theosophy, because the whole goal of Theosophy is just to study all of these things, not to preclude anything. It's like we don't have any specific pantheon or book or anything like that. Just study everything and find the truth. That's the whole goal of it, which is wise on the surface. And so you can learn a little bit about everything. Keeping in mind, of course, there's a tilt towards the Western occult perspective when you're reading especially anything by Besant. In fact, she adopted Krishnamurti, tried to set him up as being like, the new Messiah, so to speak, like saying, well, he's going to liberate the world. He ended up leaving behind Theosophy as a movement and disclaiming any title of that kind later on. So yeah, Besant was an interesting figure. Her writing on Blavatsky was as well quite illuminating, I suppose. If you're interested in that sort of thing. I'm more interested in that historical side. I know a lot of people would consider it too dry. But this is about mainly the Buddhist perspective on karma. Reincarnation is spoken of and things of that nature. Again, link in the description of my edition of this work on Amazon. Second and third links are to my books, blogs. It is highly recommended if you're interested in learning more about Theosophy as a movement. That's about all. Peace out.